Here we are with the third and last part of the historical introduction to the Etruscans. So let's see about their language. We have many inscriptions in Etruscan language and we can read them because they use a Greek alphabet that we can easily read, but from right to left. The Etruscans continue to write throughout all their history from right to left. The Greeks too started in this way, but then they changed, going to the opposite side. But we know very imperfectly grammar and morphology of the language. Why this? Because we have no variety of texts. All are religious texts, but we have no literature, history and science left, not because they didn't write about, but we simply haven't found these texts. So, which kind of vocabulary we know? It's pretty small, but it's slowly growing with new finds of inscriptions. Heading the list are proper names of private people, gods and mythological heroes, mainly Greek heroes, cities and some months of the year. We know many numbers along with numerical signs. As you can see in the pictures, we have a cup with the name inscribed, Lartia. You have to read it from the right to the left. And then you see Etruscan numbers written on these dies by pronounced words, and Etruscan numbers written by Roman numerals. So you see that were the Etruscans first using numerals. And several terms denoting familiar relations, such father, daughter, so a number of common verbs, name of vase shapes, and some rather enigmatic titles of magistracies found in inscriptions of dedication. So, religion and superstition are particularly important in Etruria. They followed a very strict religion full of rituals, and religion and divination, so the interpretation of the signs coming from the gods, so reading the future and the will of the gods, were the only things of this civilization which were still alive for centuries afterwards, so known by the future generations and people. So, behind Etruscan religion lay a set body of doctrine, Etrusca disciplina, the discipline of the Etruscans, composed mainly by divining through the interpretation of the entrails of the animals, interpreting the signs coming from the gods that they believe were the most powerful, so those of the sky, and laying out towns and fields relying to specific orientation and rituals of worship. This on the left is the longest text that we have found wrapping a mummy in Egypt and then brought by the discoverer into the Zagreb Museum. And it's a very long example of a ritual. So they were interpreting the will of the gods, mainly reading the entrails of sacrificed animal, and namely the liver, because they thought that it was a seat of life, being the largest organ in the body and the one having more blood inside. So you see, they were using instrument as this model of a sheep liver to read the omens of the gods. This special model is inscribed with all the names of the gods, so governing a sector of the sky. So the sky is projected on the surface of the model of the liver. Then in their tombs, very elaborated in Etruscan culture, they were reproducing their form of worship and their belief in the death, in the sense that they believe that the soul, at least, of the deceased continue to live in the tomb, and so that's why they fashioned the tomb as their dwellings, decorating with happy scenes of daily life. Then their worship is for sure represented by their sanctuaries. From the 6th century, so the heyday of their civilization, the Etruscans started to build solid temples, great monumental temples, but of them we have mostly only the platforms, because they were built in rock. The other parts could be of lightweight materials, for example, wood. They used wood for the columns too, and unfired bricks for the walls. So here on the right is the temple of Fiesole on the hill near Florence, where we have one of the most important Etruscan cities in Tuscany. So throughout all their chronology, we said from the 9th century BCE to the 1st century, we have a development of human resources and skills throughout Etruscan civilizations, with the production of great works of art and artifacts. So, for example, they produce pottery, starting from a coarse pottery called impasto, then using the style of the Greeks to paint their elaborated shapes of pottery. And then they produce their own form of pottery called bucchero, which they realize with a special form of firing of the clay into the oven, creating an atmosphere reduced in the percentage of oxygen and charge in carbon monoxide, so obtaining this very dark color. Then bronzes. So they produce and work bronze, and they were the greatest metal workers in the Western Mediterranean. So they produce personal objects, for example, as you can see here, a belt, a safety pin, a mirror, and then vessels, but then weapons too. Here you can see a helmet, a shield, a horse bit, and beautiful statues. And here we start to see the reproduction of mythological creatures, as the famous chimera preserved in the Archaeological Museum in Florence. Then they were masters in creating jewelry. For sure, they acquired techniques from the Near East, brought by the Greeks, And so they created miniatures, bas-reliefs, and a special form of decoration called granulation. So decorating the objects, in this case you can see in gold, with micro granules to create this incredible patterns, all done by these mini globules of gold. Then sculpture. Sculpture, they produce statues, reliefs, and temple decorations. Here too we can see the reproduction of many gods and myths. So this is the god Apollo, for example. Then the Medusa head to protect their buildings. Then here is a pediment in terracotta with the myth of the seven against Thebes. And then in many of their ash urns they were reproducing myths and epics. All of them acquired from Greek tradition. But as in every field, the Etruscans were interpreting for their own taste and their own culture and special culture all influences coming from abroad, including mythology. And then they painted their tombs with beautiful frescoes, and then they painted many objects. So here we have 3 frescoes in their tombs, and then here we have a coffin in terracotta, so fire clay, then painted in brighter colors. And here we start to see the importance of women in Etruscan society. You see which beautiful coffin was created for this princess. Then how they were organized in city-states, so independent cities. And they were the first in Italy, so creating the city as an institution, so an organized community, especially on top of hills and then protected by city walls. They were organized with a society that had a strong aristocracy, so nobility, which usually ruled in a form of oligarchy, so power of few. The meaning is this. In some cities there was a king or leading magistrate, probably called Lucumon and Zilath, and that political and military was the head of the state and governed with the help of a council of nobles, while the working classes were tied to the noble families by a relation of clientship. Slavery was admitted in Etruscan society. In Etruria, amongst the Etruscans, women had their individual first name, and unlike their counterparts in Greece and in Rome, they had this possibility. They could own also properties, and it is one of many factors that suggests that they possessed considerable social standing. So, social life for the aristocracy was represented by some special social behaviors. For example, banquets, borrowed directly from the Greeks and in the Greek form, so lying onto couches in pairs, and so eating and drinking wine. And in many of these social meetings, there were many arts performed. And the women were part of these performances, but not only. They could be at the banquet, so be seen in public and participate to social events together with their men. And in fact, you can see, for example, in this fresco and in this lead of the famous coffin preserved in Rome with a copy then in Paris at the Louvre Museum, how the couples and so the women with their husband are represented with a special tenderness, this demonstrating that the men themselves gave a social position to their women. So all the pottery that we found in their tombs were for sure put there as grave goods, but many of them, because we found for sure, especially the tombs of the aristocrats, the nobles, were tableware for the drinking of wine, so representing the social standing of this noble part of the society who could afford and could participate to these social events. Okay, so we have started to see the position of women in Etruscan society, very unusual in antiquity, and very close to our modern vision. So this is a special characteristic of the Etruscans, and then the next part of this week will be dedicated to the role of women in society, very much connected to the spread of culture, literature, including mythology. Okay, see you soon. Bye.